Welcome to Birds in the Sky, a podcast that focuses on the arts and music as a means to regulate our mental health. I am your host, Matthew Crane, a U.S. Navy veteran, musician, and artist. We'll be hearing from military veterans, mental health professionals, artists, musicians, and educators on their unique perspectives and how creative outlets can help move us forward. That's it. We hit record. We're officially doing it. It started, man. So first of all, thanks for coming in.
You're very welcome.
You're a veteran.
I am a veteran. Yes, I am. Yep.
What branch of service did you serve in?
Army, infantry. You know, a little background. I was standing in culinary school at the Erie Community College, and someone came in and said a plane just hit the World Trade Center, and I went upstairs and watched the second plane hit, and within 3 months I quit college and was in basic training. A year later, I'm in Afghanistan, just, you know, living the dream, seeing the world.
That's pretty epic, man. I can identify with that a little bit in that I had sworn into the delayed entry program September 9th, 2001.
Wow.
So I was like gung-ho.
It got real.
It got real. Like 2 days later, I'm walking through the halls. I'm still in high school. I'm 17. Delayed entry, for those of you that don't know, you can join the service before you're of age and your parents can sign the consent, but you basically don't leave until you hit your 18th birthday. So you can do like a year of recruiting before you go to basic training and all this kind of stuff. So that's basically what I was doing. I was 17. I joined the delayed entry program September 9th. And 2 days later, saw a tower burning and stopped in one of the classrooms that had a TV on and saw the second plane hit live. And, you know, same kind of thing, except I was in basic training when it wasn't like we're training for, you know, peacetime operations. It was like, okay, well, now basic training is a little bit more serious, and you can tell with the look on everybody's faces in there, the drill instructors, that this wasn't a regular, you know, push to get recruits through the pipeline. So yeah, I can identify with that a little bit.
So you had to wait 2 years before you went in?
No, I waited about a year.
Okay.
Because I left in August of 2002. So I swore in September 9th, 2001, and then I shipped out in August.
Same generation then, same era.
Yeah, same era. And honestly, it was, you know, it was kind of eye-opening because, like I said, I had this Bill Clinton peacetime era of joining the Navy and traveling to all these exotic places, really just to party. And, you know, I got to do those things, but it was definitely a mix of like serious operations mixed between and stuff like that. But so how did we meet?
Wow, this is we met through the Odyssey Project, but I think our lives are a little more tangled when we really look at it. Like, you know, Joe Donahue, mm-hmm. You guys played in the Albrights. That's my wife's cousin. And so like we have all these connections where I think you went to school with my wife, but we mm-hmm. actually met through the Odyssey Project, where we basically, Brendan Bannon was basically looking for combat veterans to hand a camera to and take pictures of their worldview. Project here, take a picture of your home, all this different stuff. And we were in the same class. Yes, I believe.
Yeah, the first cohort.
Yeah, we were definitely in the first cohort together. And so we sort of spent some time taking pictures, getting to know each other on the weekend retreat and right on the edge of Lake Erie.
Yeah, that was awesome, by the way. And I want to talk about what that experience meant. But before we get into like more into the Odyssey Project and getting into art and stuff like that, what was your experience like getting out of the military, like getting out of the Army? And did you have any expectations of how you would blend into the civilian world? Or
I honestly could not have gotten out of the Army quicker. I wanted the out so badly. You know, 2003 to 2004, I was in Afghanistan in the Paktika province. You know, I was an infantryman. I'm carrying a machine gun, just fighting. And that's sort of when I realized that I didn't like war. That conflict sort of shaped the way I saw the world and how I didn't like what we as humans were doing. We have a disagreement, fight about it. And I watched it over there, even in their own country, between their own population. And then I was in Iraq from 2005 to 2006. And the only reason I didn't stay in the military is I went to the retention officer And on the way to the to re-enlist, you know, they were offering like crazy sums of money.
Oh yeah.
$60,000 tax-free lump sum in your bank account in a couple days. The only reason I didn't do that, because I loved the infantry and I loved being in charge in the infantry and having like that control of my life and other people and being the boss of things and like really just being good at what I did. Like, you think about the military, you train for hours upon hours, like 4 years to train up to one spot and just have total control of what you're doing, like mastery of it. And I didn't know if I wanted to stay in and have a deployment cycle every year, every 2 years. So I walk over to this office and nobody's there. I knock on the door, nobody answers. And that was sort of my coin flip, my let the universe figure this out for me.
Yeah.
And
nobody's home.
Nobody's home.
Yeah.
I guess I'll get out.
Yeah.
When I got out, it was sort of, you know, computers existed. I didn't have a lot of resources to sort of get me to where I wanted to be. I got out. I lived with my parents for a little bit until I got up and running on my own.
What year was this?
2006. I got out in September of 2006.
Interesting. I got out in August of 2006.
Right. So
I always say the same thing too. Like when I got out, there wasn't like all the resources today. Like, I don't think the first iPhone was out yet. So like apps and widgets and things like that was not a thing. If you wanted to call the VA, you had to get a phone book, a paper phone book, you know, or look up.
There wasn't a Google search. I didn't Google search VA and find it and call them. No, I mean, right out of it, it was a little tough. I didn't have direction. You know, if you search jobs for infantry, the two things that pop up are infantry and police officer. And so I was like, what am I going to do? I don't have any I have skills. I have a skill set that's like very unique, but what do I do with this? Like
Liam Neeson. I have a very particular set of skills.
But it's true. I didn't know what to do. So I got out in September, so I missed school. I couldn't get right into college. So I sort of got back into college right after I got out and was like, okay, I'm going to dedicate myself to just knocking out a degree in the smallest amount of time possible. I didn't really have a ton of direction. I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I had some ideas in my brain, and then the real world just sort of hands you things that you don't expect, like a recession right when you're graduating from college, and like, all right, now I have a 4-year degree and all the jobs I want don't exist anymore, or they're not hiring people because there's 1,000 people with the same skill set but 20 years of experience out of work. I never thought I'd work for the government again, honestly. I got out of the service and I thought, done with that. I saw the stuff I saw in Iraq and the things we saw go on and like behind the scenes things. Like, I don't need any part of that. But, you know, I sort of fell in with other veterans, like getting involved in the V.F.W. And that sort of gave me a sense of like belonging, sort of seeing these Vietnam vets. And at the time we still had World War II vets, you know, that had been going over to D-Day or were involved in, you know, submarines or airplane, whatever they were involved in. But it was good to talk to those individuals and see how they were and maybe how I didn't want to be and how I wanted to be when I sort of grew up. Or
yeah, I think I feel like I might know a little bit or can identify a little bit of what you're saying, and that I had a similar thing too. Like the only place really to go was like a VFW. And right now, currently, as of this date, I'm 11 years sober from alcohol. And a large part of that is my experience in the military and as a veteran. But first getting out, you jump into the VFW and it has its place that you do belong, and you can have a place where you can actually share horrific things that you've seen. Because I imagine when you're getting out and you're going to college and there's a recession and you're trying to figure out where you fit in, you're not talking about these skeletons and demons that are like behind you. You're kind of trying to move forward.
Yeah, no, that was definitely for me. I didn't really want to talk about the things I had done in the military when I got out. It was, I'm in school as a 25-year-old and everyone else is 19. So at the time you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so much older than everybody. I have this whole set of world experiences that most people aren't even going to understand or identify with, and how are they going to relate to me? How do they connect with me? And so it was very comfortable to sort of get into a place where I didn't have to worry about the other individuals understanding what I had been through, because they'd all been through the same thing. Like, for anyone that doesn't know, a VFW is a veteran of foreign wars. And so everyone in there has been overseas, most likely in some sort of conflict or experienced that conflict in the military. So it's very easy to belong in those places. But, you know, the alcohol is there. I definitely got into alcohol when I got out. And I know you just said 11 years.
11 years sober.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
I am on day 16 of not having any alcohol.
That's amazing, dude. That's a gift.
Every day I'm like, I'm just going to get through. I'm going to do this today.
Just today, man.
Tomorrow's not real. Doesn't even exist yet.
Exactly.
Today is today. I'm going to get through today and do it. And I'm feeling good. Like, you know, I sort of hit this point in my life where I wanted to change all of me for the better. You know, I've been working on my mind for a couple of years, and now it's time to really focus on, you know, being here for my children. I've got 3 kids. I want to see them grow up. Can't do that if I'm not here. And
if you're not here, I think you mean suicide there, but even just being a drunk in a V.F.W. or in a bar, you're also not there. But it could lead you to that place of suicide and ultimate despair where you feel like you're a burden.
Yeah. I don't think I ever never really came across that with myself, but I definitely have been in situations where I'm not present because I'm intoxicated. And so I'm definitely not there, you know,
right.
Or you look back a year and be like, I don't even remember that. What happened?
So I have a lot of grief in my world, and my experience with grief is that it always kind of, you know, it's like when it first happens, it's like you just jumped into the water and all the waves are big and stuff like that. But as time goes by, you know, the water calms down a little bit, but it's still moving and ebbing and flowing up and down. And I have this thing where sometimes, like my brother had passed away a number of years ago, and about 7 years at this point. And every now and then I'll just get these overwhelming waves of grief. So I don't know, like if you've experienced any loss from your combat, you know, deployments, or had lost any friends or anything like that. But even in just regular life, like how do you navigate grief now? Or I know you're only 16 days sober, but like what's your attachment in relationship to grief?
I definitely have friends of mine who have either committed suicide or died while they were in the service. And that's always hard. That's some of the hardest thing, like thinking I wasn't there for the person and sort of having that kind of grief, like, wow, what if I could have done more for them? Why wasn't I available? I really don't let too much of that stuff weigh heavy on me. When it hits me pretty hard. A good friend of mine who had gone into SF and had served multiple deployments, just out of the blue, you know, committed suicide. And that hurt me so much. I mean, I cried for like days, like it just kept coming up, and there's nothing, you know, I'm not one of those people that's going to dwell on that forever. I accept it. You know, they're not here, they're gone. It's hard, but how do we prevent that? Like I'm always thinking, like, how do I prevent that from somebody else from happening? And I always find that for me, I can't fix what already happened in the past. That's gone, you know, but in the future, if I see somebody struggling or having a hard time, I am always willing to open up and talk to them and say, you know, hey, what's up? What's going on? Especially if it's a veteran and I know they're going through a hard time. I do not have an issue with just talking, because sometimes that's all somebody's looking for, is just being able to just listen, like talk to you, have somebody listen and just sort of spill what's inside of them. So I don't know if I'm the right person to say like how I handle my grief, because I sort of probably internalize it somewhat.
But I think you're right though, and correct in saying that like the fundamental human way to approach it is to just offer a connection. Like if somebody is struggling, you know, offer that space, to share space and let them.
That is the most human thing we can do, right?
Exactly. So I think you're the perfect person to ask, right? Every human is the perfect person to ask that question, because that's part of what I kind of want to do here. Is that I've talked to a couple people who be like, well, I've never really experienced trauma. And I have to laugh. I'm like, you're alive. Like, I just don't really believe you. A lot of times we tend to minimize things. Like I've minimized traumatic events in my life and have shared them sometimes with a giggle or a laugh, like a lot of veterans do. And sometimes, you know, civilians will sometimes be a little off put by you're sharing this kind of story and you're giggling through it. And it's really like, well, for me, that's not even the worst event. And two, it's just kind of like, you know, if you're going to talk about it, laughing sometimes helps it make it easier to relive that experience, because you don't want to deny some of those. I don't want to. No, I don't want to deny them. Agreed. So when I do talk about them, I'll try to like my brother, for example, he was a U.S. Army veteran, and he was one of the veterans that killed himself, became one of those statistics and stuff like that. But when I tell some stories about him, they're always like, I'm teasing him or I'm picking on him or I'm calling him names, and it makes me laugh because like it's hard to talk about. But we just have that kind of sense of humor, I think, as vets or people that have been through a lot of shit.
I know me personally, laughing about things, you can always tell it's pretty bad if someone's laughing as like in the service, because they're not going to cry about it. And so like sometimes they're just going to replace that emotion of like tears and sadness and worry with like a laugh. And you're laughing about the situation. It's not funny. Like at the end of the day, there's nothing funny about like watching a vehicle get blown up, but you're laughing because it's not you, or you're laughing because like you think of all the other things that could have happened about it.
Well, the other thing is that I think that there's nothing, I mean, crying is incredibly useful, and it's one of the most powerful ways we can release, but doesn't contribute to a situation like that. Like a vehicle's blown up. Now everybody has to get into battle positions. Yeah, you can cry about it, or you can laugh about it, which is doing the same thing for your body. It's helping you process through that. It's not maybe the correct emotion, but it's the useful emotion in that scenario. Right. But I think a lot of vets, when we do that and come home, we forget that the proper emotion should still be attended to. And that event, maybe we should have those tears over. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause
I know what you're saying.
The initial response to that moment was maybe laughter, because it needed to get you from point A to point B and get to cover or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna swing this back to how do I deal with grief? And I think one way to deal with a lot of untapped emotions is sort of through art, through tapping into that root of like creative outlet. You can like when we were doing the photo project we were involved in, like being able to go out and express yourself through images and not have to actually communicate orally to anybody, and let other people sort of feel what you're feeling through like seeing it through your eye. It's through your lens, and you're developing the picture, editing it to make it real, and for them to look at and acknowledge and sort of become part of you, but without even ever having to talk to you. Like, I think art's definitely, and I know that's something you want to bring forward with a lot of this and what you're doing. And I think that's huge, because I think art helps people get in touch with their emotions and release their emotions, and maybe deal with the stuff they've got going on.
Perfect, man. Yeah. And that's excellent. And it's absolutely what this whole podcast is about. I know so many people that find benefit in art and music as a way to not get in touch or get in tap with our emotions, but to reframe events, I think is a way. And I think that's what you were saying about making those pictures and getting them to feel like, I was going to interrupt and be like, explain what you mean by feel, but I don't have to, because the viewer most likely is never going to be in the place that you were, right?
And no two people will ever have the same emotion or feel the same
right.
thing, right?
So the interpretive nature of it is like, you can make it feel in harmony with the event that you had, and it might even look completely different. It could be happy colors even, and not even be like an A and B related comparison. But the act of like thinking deeply about something and how you can interpret that in something like color or form, because art making is fundamentally about choices. Like you're making a choice. If you're writing a song, you're going to make a choice from which note or which chord. A camera, like how are you going to frame your image? You're making, the whole process of art making is decision making. And when you're in a decision making mindset, you're not exactly thinking about trauma. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of
right.
Like,
when I got into taking pictures and creating images, I didn't really think about a lot of the outside world. It was a complete escape for me. Like I had 3 little kids at the house that needed to be taken care of, but like my wife's there taking care of them. And that was sort of my escape for a day or two or for an hour. Like I'm going to go take pictures, and not only am I escaping them, but I'm escaping everything else in the world and just sort of focusing on whatever the project or whatever I had creative. Like I started getting into double exposures and really found like a little niche and really enjoyed sort of layering images on top of images and sort of building my own world that other people could look at and sort of be like, whoa, that's wild. Like, why would you even think to do it like that? But it's just sort of what I felt and sort of how I felt. It was an escape. It was, but it was creative in the sense that I could not think about trauma. You could have trauma, you could be dealing with trauma and still not be thinking about it, because you're sort of in your own universe of creating artwork.
Yes, absolutely.
It just keeps you busy, and then you've got to go back and edit it. And for anyone that takes takes pictures knows that the editing portion is hours more than whatever it takes to actually take the pictures. And so like you're sitting there working on them, thinking about them, and it keeps you busy, keeps you out of your own mind, essentially, keeps you out of your own thoughts, if you will. If you're having that kind of thought, like, you know, trauma thoughts or grief thoughts, sort of lets you move past that and move into your own space, your own comfortable space where you can sort of operate.
Have you ever heard of EMDR therapy?
I think I have. I don't know what.
So it's like, I'm obviously not a doctor or a scientist, right? A scientist. So I've done it though. I actually have done it through the VA and then actually through private clinicians, but it's this cool thing. It's like, you know, the Knight Rider car, it's got that light on the front that goes back and forth. Well, they have this, it's not red, it's a white light, and it goes back and forth. And the idea is that while you're looking straight ahead at this light and you're tracking your eyeballs only to move with the light. Now, it's like a brain hack. While you're doing that, you're being prompted on sort of walking through a traumatic event. And the act of following that light, I guess, separates you just enough from the event to where it kind of like you don't have that emotional response again physically. Like your blood pressure doesn't go up and all this other things that happen when you relive trauma. And anyway, it's pretty cool. Check it out. But that's kind of what art making is for me too, though, is that when I'm engaged in a creative process, whatever that is, it dislocates my mind from everyday thinking, just in general, trauma, or even just a list of things, errands I need to run. So it like takes me out of that world and makes me make choices that feel good, right? So with Odyssey Project, what did you learn about yourself in that? Were you making art before that experience in any kind of way?
I mean, I really wasn't. I've always liked taking pictures. I took a photography class in high school, you know, the old school
film 35 millimeter.
Yep. 35 millimeter,
nice.
Dark room. Enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Sort of got out of it when, you know, between the military and getting out and going to college and having kids, I didn't have time for extra stuff. I mean, for a period there, I was working 40 hours a week, working overtime 10 hours, plus working a second gig, you know, bartending for 10 hours, 20 hours a week, just sort of hustling, right? I didn't have time for art. I didn't have to have the time to do those things. And I always enjoy it. I've always enjoyed art. I mean, when I got out of the service, I worked the door at Mohawk Place. You know,
it's a punk rock club, right?
Yeah, punk rock.
You know,
right,
stickers on the urinal.
Yes.
All that.
It's live music every day but Monday, basically, or was at the time. And I loved it. You know, I could sit there and listen to music, barely got paid, but didn't care because I'm in there listening to raw, new, there are no cover bands. There's not a single cover being played in there. It's original music. I always enjoyed the arts. My parents would take me to Sculpture Park as a child, or the Albright Knox. If we were in other cities, I went to Washington DC as a kid and went to a lot of art museums. You know, as a kid, you're like, this is awful. Like, who wants to be in an art museum, right? But as you grow, you realize like those experiences, you know, are powerful. It's good to see all the different creativity that's happened and like enjoy it. And this wasn't the day of the internet where I could just go on and look at the art that exists in the world. You had to go to a museum to see it. You had to go someplace and actually engage with it. And I've always liked the arts. A lot of my friends are artists or musicians. So I wasn't creating art when I got into Odyssey. So it was really an outlet that I hadn't even explored before to sort of tap into and connect myself with myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Getting in touch with me, because I'm the one creating, I'm the one sharing, you know, it sort of opened up a little vulnerability, because every week we'd sit in a classroom and share our work, let other people comment on it, let people see what you've done. I think that's hard for a lot of people to sort of open their worldview up to everybody, but it was liberating to me. I really enjoyed just sitting there and putting my work on display and being like, sort of judge me, you know, like not that anyone was overly critical or harsh about anything, but people would comment on it, and that's enjoyable. Like there's always something like, how do I get better? By hearing people say, well, if you just took this out of the corner or focused more on this, you know, that sort of helped me in my own process. So no, I wasn't really creating any type of art always wanted to be like write or draw or anything. I'm just not that talented.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It brings me to something that I'll probably talk about on every podcast with every guest, is that like in the world of art and music, there's always this thing where if you're not any good at it, you shouldn't try it or shouldn't even go that way. And that's just false. Like you don't have to be good at something to enjoy doing it. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And like there's so many like guitar videos are classic for this. Like there's so many shredders out there that it scares people from even like attempting to go and learn the instrument. It's like, you don't have to be good at it for it to bring you joy. And like going into that little classroom, and you have to be reliable. You wanted to show up with work. You didn't want to let the other guys in the group down, kind of thing. It required a little bit of vulnerability and trust. And I think that was good for a group of vets. And also for me, it was good to force me for a reason to get out of the house and go make pictures, instead of like, I think for veterans, especially, the worst thing you could do is stay locked inside.
No, I think that was a huge part of the Odyssey, was getting the veterans out of their comfort zone, out into the world. You didn't even have to go into a busy area. You could go take landscape.
We went to a cornfield.
Went to a cornfield. Yeah, we went grapevines, abandoned silos. I mean, we were all over the place where you didn't have human interaction for the most part. I think it's that sense of connection. I know you and I have talked about this before, but humans aren't like we're individuals, but we don't exist anywhere on this planet as sole human beings without other people, resources to lean on, with other people to have. And the military is such a bonding experience. You know, it's all the movies, Band of Brothers or whatever, any type of movie, it's always brotherhood or, you know, camaraderie, right? There's always that sense of belonging and group. And it's weird to get out of the military and not have that sense of like, I have a group of 30 people that I know I can count on every day of the week. And a lot of people get out and they might have come from broken homes or failed relationships, and they're just sort of out there on their own without anyone to turn to. And so when you can get a group of vets together and they're not all just drinking, and you're actually doing something productive where you have to go out into the world and you know other people are going to have to rely on you when you come back, it sort of gives you that sense of purpose again. I always find that having a sense of purpose in this world really can drive someone to be better in this existence. And part of me feels that's what happens sometimes with, you know, our brothers that we lose, that take their own lives, is they sort of lose that sense of purpose, and they sort of lose what are they doing that's good. And if you can find that for somebody, or if somebody can find that for themselves, they can really develop a strong, enjoyment for what they're doing. Like, I may not like going to work every day, but every day I leave work knowing that because I went to work, other veterans are getting paid benefits and getting helped in a way. So like at the end of the day, I have a purpose, no matter how many hours, how bad it is, how many people get in my business about what I'm doing, at the end of the day, people are being helped. And that helps me, feel better about the world I live in.
Offline, I think a couple of days ago, we talked about The Marvelous Sauce.
Yeah, we did.
It's a painting, 1890. I forget who the artist is, but it is a cardinal, a cardinal clergy member of the Catholic Church, in his opulent mansion, like a big brass and copper pots everywhere, extraordinarily wealthy. And he's tasting the sauce and having his personal chef taste his sauce. Anyways, it's a very famous painting. What is it about that painting that draws you to it?
I know we were talking about this, and the more I started thinking about it, I was like, what is it? It's the color. The color red pops on that in a way that I don't know how it contrasts everything else on that image. The way I remember, he's a big fat cardinal, and red, his red color is just tasting sauce. And I don't know what, he's the artist is famous for that red color. He's used it in a lot of other kind of settings, but his work is, from what I understand, generally pretty tongue in cheek. And it's always kind of commenting on the hypocrisy of the political and clergy class of the late 1800s, which really isn't any different than today. Like how,
how people can get so wealthy when they're really trying to work
serving
for the poor,
serving other people.
serving other people, right?
The more I thought about your question about like what's an artwork or a song that really like touched me, I started thinking about that and I was really like, wow, this is complex. Like where I could never just pick one thing, but I just remember being in, Sculpture Park as a little kid. No, Sculpture Park is
Griffith
Sculpture Park.
Yes.
Yeah. It's in the southern tier of New York, in Ashford Hollow, I believe. And it's just these metal sculptures from like the 70s up until today. There's current stuff in there too, but there's one that's like a castle, I think, or a tower. And I just have such vivid memories as a child of like climbing up this thing. And then I have vivid memories of a teenager going there like after school, grabbing a bunch of kids, like a bunch of teenagers going out there and just sort of, exploring, like looking at artwork in the middle of the countryside. It's just wild. It's sort of like you're not expecting to have art on a hillside where you have to walk 2 or 3 miles, and it sort of captures a lot of things I like now. Like I like going out for walks. I like art. This is great. It's all in one place. You can sort of go and experience. And now they have a stage. I went and saw a show there this summer, and that started getting me thinking about like all the different venues I really like. Like I've, different music venues I've been to that just sort of touch a part of me and are a part of me. Like you saw a great show at this place. Why was it so great? What was so great about it? All that stuff sort of, your question really made me start thinking about deep, like, man, art is in my life. It's in there. And
well, good. I mean, because if you think about it, if there was no art, you would live in a sterile environment. You'd be in an operating room.
Yeah.
Right? Everything would be, I mean, everything, every object, a pencil, a pen, like every object has design and thoughtful.
And man, even an operating room, I think has some design and art into like,
of course. Let's be, but that's just the thing. And, it's important to me because every time you hear about cuts to education, it's always immediately in the band room or music or the orchestra or the arts.
So that's huge because this whole question about Odyssey and all of like, what's my favorite art? I started thinking about all of the companies out in like the local community. I know like National Fuel and I think M&T Bank, and there's a whole list of them that were like throwing money at the arts. And that's huge because that it's important for us to have art. I think it's so important for us as, what are they called? The humanities. I mean, it's huge for us to have like art in our lives, music, artworks, pictures. Like it's an escape. It can be an escape for somebody.
Yeah. And I'm going to double down on what Steve just said in that, like, if you're a person in charge of fund development or donations in a major company, like the sponsors of the Odyssey project quite literally probably saved dozens of lives. And I think like Canon camera was one of the big ones. They gave us a ton of different lenses, and they were older 5D Mark III bodies, I think, but still totally up to par to make great images even today. And like that was extraordinary. Like it's probably just their overstock inventory. They need to unload it. Like I don't care what it is, but it was beneficial.
It was life changing.
It was
for me. It was life changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're going to make cuts somewhere, it should never be the arts, because someone seeing an image as a kid or listening to a song that could shape their future. I mean, that could shape the person they become based on what they're interpreting from it or what they're picking up from it.
Yeah, and like. Here's a subtle non-artistic thing. There was a science educator in the 70s, Carl Sagan, right? He was kind of like Bill Nye, but not so hip, I guess.
Familiar.
Yeah, not so hip. A little bit more thoughtful. He wrote Contact, I think, the film, the book that turned into a film. But he had this wonderful little monologue he had done about this pale blue dot image. So one of the Voyager spacecraft, once it got way out of the solar system, turned around and took a photograph of Earth suspended in this sunbeam, right? That's how Carl Sagan put it anyway. Beautiful way to put it. But that's science and engineering, if you think about it, right? These, a bunch of engineers and mathematicians and physicists put together this extraordinary Voyager spacecraft machine, got it up into the solar system, sent it out there. But it still took a human's heart to say, turn that robot around and make a picture for us to see and connect with, because that image really puts the scale of humanity in like in your face, raw, like this is how big you are. And I think that's critically important. And as much as that's science and engineering, that feat, like it is one of the most artistic and poetic things that I think man has ever really given to man. So I don't know if you know that image or anything like that.
I'm aware of it. And it definitely is, it definitely like makes you feel what makes you feel feels like stuff you're not used to feeling, like, whoa, that is the size of the earth. And this thing isn't even out of our solar system yet. Yeah. Like how small are we? And I'm just a person on this place. Like, however, so small, but all of our actions are huge because they impact everyone else that we encounter every single day. Like, it's like the yin and the yang of it. Like, we are so small and insignificant in the grand scheme of everything. However, in the grand scheme of our lives, our existences, every action we do is huge to those around us and the people we encounter. Beautiful. Yep.
So what's next for you? What do you got going on? You got anything cooking?
I don't have too much cooking. I'm super happy. I'm just going to say this. I'm so glad that you just you tossed up a post on on Facebook the other day about doing a podcast, because I have been thinking about doing a podcast since I showed you the text to myself. I sent myself a text telling me to start one in August of last year. I bought all the equipment to do it, and I just got busy with life, and life got in the way of it. And that's something I'm definitely got on the horizon. I'm going to start, definitely going to be working on that. I mean, I am fully immersed in my life of raising, an 11, 9, and 7-year-old.
Most important job in the world.
Huge. Yeah. Making sure they're good people. It's one of the things I tell them all the time. Like, there's good people in the world and there's not good people. We're good people, do the right thing, sort of teach them to do the right thing. Raising kids. I take pictures when I can. I have pictures on my camera I haven't edited in probably 6 months. And it's like, now I just stockpile in it and just like do it in one big week. I'll just take a week and just open everything up and be like, all right, this is good. This is good. Mm-hmm. I work 40 hours, 48 hours every week. And I'm just going to keep plugging away at that. That's, gives me a purpose, gives me a little bit of a drive every day to get out of bed. And, I think every day I really just try and improve myself, like physically, mentally, if it's, what I've found for myself, that what I really like doing for me is just going for a walk, mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, go for a run, throw on an audiobook and just sort of, get my mind right, get my body right. But
what's the latest or the best or most impactful audiobook you've put down?
I think Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is one of the most
classic,
game-changing things I've ever listened to. And I'm not sure how it took me 40 years to discover this, because when you really listen to this, it to me, it's like the foundation of a lot of the current day religions and how they operate and the philosophies. And it just tells you how to be a good person and live your life without, not without worry,
I like meditation specifically because he was a functional philosopher. And what I mean is by like that Stoic philosophy he sort of embodied, he used it to actually navigate his life.
Right.
And he put those ideas into action. And he was no stranger to war either. And that means a lot when I'm looking for perspective and for how to be a good person. Sometimes I need to find people that have been in those dark places to really, not that their words hold more value in general, but they do to me personally in the way that I relate to their experiences. But yeah, I love the Stoics in that. There's a Greek Stoic, I don't know his name, but he was the guy who was a slave, then he got freed and became a Stoic. But his quote is
I was like Epicurus, or it was
something Epictetus or something. God entrusted me with myself.
Brilliant.
That's terrifying. Brilliant. And empowering. God has entrusted me with myself. Like that's both of those things. It's scary and awesome.
What is your greatest power? It's being able to control your reaction to other people. Yeah. Like, you don't have to get mad at other people. You don't have to get sad about that. That's your reaction. Like, you can control that. And if you can sort of tap into that and embrace that, it's very powerful. It's very difficult to put into action. Like, in my sobriety journey, the act of not drinking every day, like in the first few days, like, it was like, okay, there's a lot of free time. It's easy. Just don't drink that first sip. And it's like, when you're trying to actually commit to that improvement in your life, you realize that, like, oh, that the simple stuff is actually the hard stuff. I was always good with the super complex. It was doing, starting off at level 1 in a game or something. I was never going to do that. Like, the first time I play any game, I don't start at rookie. I switch it all the way up into expert, and I get crushed for weeks until I get good enough. But, like, that's just the wrong way to go about it, I think. Yeah. So I don't have too much on the horizon. I mean, or maybe I have tons of stuff on the horizon. I don't really know. I sort of take it a day at a time and sort of just roll with what the world has to offer me. My wife's been opening up businesses. Like, she's on her second or third one in the last 3 or 4 years, and just keeps sort of, as she gets busier, I sort of step it back and take more time with the family and sort of have more time, to sort of watch my kids grow. And I find a lot of joy in that, like watching my children just be children, just do the things that I did as a kid and most people do as a kid. Do they, any of them play any instruments or anything like that? Oh yeah. My son plays the trumpet. My daughter got into the drums. My youngest doesn't do anything yet, but he's got this wild energy. That's just, he's a goof. I mean, he will make these dance moves up, and he's just always like sort of the extreme. He's a ham, I don't know. He's just always just hamming it up. And, my daughter's they're all artistic. We encourage the arts in our house. So every year the Erie County Fair rolls around, and we allow them to enter pictures into, like, I think I saw that last year. Summer, yeah, we've been doing it every year. They've been winning ribbons every year, and they love, there's sort of like a sportsmanship to it. Like, they know that they created good art, and then they take it in, and then they get a ribbon put on it, and now they feel good about themselves because they've done something. Other people get to go in and enjoy it. I mean, I'm proud because my kids are, like, embracing this and enjoying it, and we encourage it. We want them to be well-rounded. So what made you choose the Army? Why the Army? That's a great question. I didn't want to be a Marine. Why? I don't know. Somewhat intimidating. Marines can be intimidating. Like, they're always in those, like, this, the most dressed up of the dressed up. Mm-hmm. My dad was drafted in the Army. I had an uncle that was, it was probably my uncle who was in the reserve for 30 plus years, and, would show me his uniforms and different stuff. And so it's probably just having that interaction with other people that were in the Army. Had my dad been a Marine or my uncle been a Marine, I probably would have been in the Marines or the Air Force or another branch, but they were Army. So sort of my whole family had been, well, I guess one of my other uncles was a Marine during Vietnam. So, but I had more interaction with the Army veteran. I had my neighbor's dad was in the Army for years. So it's probably just how I grew up. It's like most people that are Republicans or Democrats have parents that are Republicans or Democrats. Like, it's sort of like you drive a Ford because your dad drives a Ford. Right. I mean, it's what you see growing up. It wouldn't have really mattered to me. I wanted to be, after September 11th, I wanted to be in it. I wanted to be in the thick of it. Mm-hmm. My ASVAB scores were great. They basically told me, you do whatever you want in the service. And you went infantry. And I said, I want to be in the infantry. And the guy's like, well, anything, dude. Like, you could do anything. Like, you can do anything you want. You can pick any job. Like, he's not allowed to tell you. They tried to talk me out of it. Like, he was seriously like, I drove a forklift and I played PlayStation every day at the end of my shift. And he's like, that's what I did. Like, you sure you don't want to do something else? I was like, no, I want to do infantry. And like, they tried to sell me everything. They're like, you have culinary school? We'll get you Ranger Bat. We'll get you a $6,000 enlistment bonus. We'll get you airborne. And I was like, you know, I'd seen Black Hawk Down. I don't want to be the chef. I don't want to be the cook missing out on the action. Like, I felt like if I'm going to serve, I'm going to be the one that's in the mix, making a difference, out there making decisions, like in it. And I ended up, that's exactly how we ended up in Afghanistan. I mean, we were in it. We were in it. We were in firefights. We were up in Lozano Ridge taking fire from, we weren't taking fire from Pakistan, right? Like,
right,
yeah. We were
wink,
definitely
wink,
weren't
nod.
getting shot at by hundreds of people over in Pakistan, or, you know, we got RPG'd, you know, I don't know, we had crazy experience. And then in Iraq, it was just IED after IED, hundreds of IEDs, like just, and those were scary, man. I'd rather get shot at. Honest, any day of the week, I'd rather get shot at than have the chance to roll over or hit an IED. Like, that's scary. And because then you get home and you're driving your car having thoughts of like, that tire might blow up, that tree on the side of the road, that box that just blew across the road or is sitting there. Like,
does that still go through your mind to this day?
There are still some times when I see something that looks out of place. It really sort of has to be out of place.
Right.
Like,
and maybe your blood pressure goes up just a little bit. I just
think about like, what is going on with, why is this over here? Or isn't it weird that there's a car with a flat tire just sitting here in this weird location? I try not to think too much about it today. Honestly, I've been out long enough and I've done enough sort of digging in my own emotions and thoughts to sort of not be impacted by those things anymore. Like, the past is the past to me. That's
one thing, but what is like a domestic terror attack, like a shooting in Tops in Buffalo, like in our own city? Like, how does that impact you?
Oh man, I feel like the amount of shootings that have been happening, I'm almost numb to it, which bothers me. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like,
that should bother you.
It does bother me, because it's so common. It's almost too common now. I am very big into the security of this nation and keeping this country like free from terrorists and things of that nature. And I don't like that kind of stuff, but I'm very aware of it. And I'm very sort of vigilant when I go into places about like sort of scanning the room, taking a look at exits and, like, is somebody out of place? I do catch myself doing that a lot. That's a great question, because I actually do find myself like, even in like a store, like sort of scanning everybody, looking at everybody, making sure nobody's out of place or nobody seems out of place or nobody's, popping off. I think that's probably pretty common with veterans. Like,
I think so too. Cause I was never in firefights or anything like that, but vigilance and things like that are just taught across the board, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I was coming home, and I did some forward deployed stuff in like Kuwait, and I flew into Basra one time, it was a green zone and stuff like that. But actually getting my eyeballs on the reality of the inside situation, it makes you think a little bit differently. And I've heard other people too, like, especially in 06, 07, when some of the first wave of us were coming back and out, people like healthcare professionals trying to talk you out of being hypervigilant. Like, you don't need to have that here because, that was there, you're in a different place and it's separated. But it's like, yeah, but I'm looking at this street in this neighborhood, and there's nothing to say that like a couple motivated people can't just come and create havoc here for a couple of days. And then slowly over time from 2006 to now, that's actually happened with all the amount of local US based terrorist attacks that have gone on. And it's just proving the way, like, yeah, no, it's not bad to be vigilant or hyper vigilant. Like, dangerous people are everywhere.
I don't ever want to undo the training I've had or how I operate. Like, people always ask that question. How was your time? Did you like being in the military? The military made me the person I am today, and I like who I am. Like, without that, Lord only knows where I'm going to end up. Like, probably isn't going to be in a good spot like I am now. I'm in a great spot. And it's because the military sort of taught me who I am. Like, legit, like going through basic training. How was basic training? It sucked. It sucked so bad. Like, it sucked every day. Like, every day you're waking up like, oh, this is awful.
I make really bad choices.
But I'm not going to quit on all these guys. And I'm not going to quit on myself. What it really came down to was, are you going to quit on yourself? And I wouldn't let myself give up. And that is huge. And it sort of made me realize that I can do anything. Like I honestly will do, if I really want to do something, I'll do it. I can do it. I know I'm capable of it. I know the world will allow it. Like if someone else has done it before, I know I can do it. There's nothing out there that's so impossible that I can't if I want to.
Yeah. My military service did the exact same thing for me. Like I meet sometimes people are like, you have like a lot of skills and hobby. And it's like, well, I just came from an environment where, you know, like in the Navy, you can get qualified across multiple different jobs, and they encourage that. And like the reason I was able to do a lot of cool stuff is I was in a helicopter squadron, but I was, you know, able to work in other shops like the power plants and the avionics shop. I was loading bombs and stuff like that.
Cool.
Because I went and spent my free time getting training and cross training these other disciplines. And that just like never stopped. When I got out, I was like, oh, well, there's this thing I want to do. I don't know how to do it. So there's always a barrier.
And you're still training yourself, right? Didn't you just say you got a degree, right? Like
I
just
did.
Recently?
Yeah, I just used my GI Bill during COVID. I graduated in 2001 for computer information systems, which is...
I want to ask you a question. Is that something that you found is helpful to you in your mental state? Like just continuing to grow yourself and like challenging yourself to do new things?
I don't know if I stopped long enough ever in between chasing rabbit holes to consider that, but it keeps me busy for sure. I'm just really interested in how things work and systems, and really like when it comes down to creating things and making something, if I have something in mind that I want to make, like there's no limit to like, I'll learn whatever I need to in order to make this happen. So yeah, it's something that keeps me grounded. I can't just stop learning right now. So, I mean, you know, I'm just going to keep filling it up. But, you know, the more I put in, I forget other stuff I learned when I was younger.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
you know, it's not endless, man. I'm just I'm shaking stuff out to put new things in. Yeah.
Yeah, this was great. I had a great time. And hopefully I get a chance to interview you in the future and sort of ask you a bunch of questions.
We're going to do it. Keep an eye out because keep an ear out because Steve's going to have his podcast starting up soon as well. And I will be on there and he can turn the questioning to me, and I'm happy to do it. So
I'm happy.
Steve, thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
You've been listening to Birds in the Sky. I'm your host, Matthew Crane. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.